Welcome to Coach's Corner, everyone. Thanks for watching the show here, a Wednesday night edition of Four-Wheel Drive. Got my good friend and buddy, high school teammate, Captain Billy Pendock on. Billy, what's up, brother?
Paulie, good to be here. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, man. As you can see behind me, the Four-Wheel Drive was a great defensive line for Syracuse University in the early 80s. Billy Pendock, Blaze Winner, Timmy Green's right above, right there above me. Jamie Kimmel's right over my head. The Four-Wheel Drive. Shout out to those guys. Blaze is in Orlando, so he's prepping for the storm. So first thing we wanted to say is all our thoughts and prayers are with all those people in the eye of the storm, in the path of that storm. So we're praying for you and hope everybody comes out sound and safe. Yeah, it's a bad one down there, Billy.
Absolutely, man. We're praying for everybody. You know, I'm thinking about my brother Blaze, praying for him. I hope all is well.
Yeah, we do too. All right, here at Coach's Corner, you know, we try to inspire and educate, the mind to think, the heart to feel, and the body to act. That's right. We're going to try to help you out. Game situations is our topic today, subject, and hope you enjoy it. Football is situation as much as action. That's a quote from the legendary Vince Lombardi. This statement is true for every sport and actually in every game. Certain situations are actually, you know, evidently more critical than others. And when the pressure is high, some coaches, a lot like players, they panic or they choke. Do you know what the difference is? When someone panics, they think too little. When someone chokes, they're thinking too much. Okay, so there exists in every single play in football hundreds of split-second decisions with these 22 players. They're actually each one of them making 7 to 10 choices on every play. So situations will dictate your actions. A player has 7 to 10 decisions on every play, depending on the certain situations. How they react to that situation will be the difference in their performance. Let's take, for example, the defensive back. After the play is whistled dead, there are certain situations approaching the next play that a DB has to be aware of. Number one, time on the clock. Is it close to the end of the first half or the game? What is the score? Determine if it's a run or pass situation. You have to know the down and distance. Is there going to be a 2-minute drill? A DB has to know that down and distance because his alignment and his cushion on the receiver will differ. The down and distance also triggers run pass probabilities, which I'm sure, Billy, you can talk to about in a second, whether you're in a run mode defense or a pass rush responsibility. But the DB has to know the position of the receiver on the field. Coaches call it a drop. Sometimes in zone coverage, every linebacker and DB has a certain spot to go. Secondary coaches, they use the hash marks and the numbers on the field to divide the field up in the halves, thirds, and quarters. Okay, so that's why I would paint the practice field of all my teams that I coach. So the DBs had a dropping point. Okay, did this every week. Doing this helps the back seven line up properly. Billy, when I know skill positions, we play in a lot of space, you know.
Yep.
So alignment is critical for us. We have more space, so sometimes we can. Yeah, I say this, but you can't even take one false step as a DB. How do defensive linemen approach certain situations in a game and how they rush different?
Well, I'll tell you, we take it apart in some parts. You know, first of all, down and distance has a lot to do with it. You know, when you talk about where you are on the field, down and distance, it's a lot of times you're going to lean towards maybe a run situation, maybe a pass situation. But at the end of the day, there's always that split second decision you got to make. You know, if and that's like, you know, and we talk about football, and I kind of after my career in football, going into police work, it's kind of almost prepared me for my profession because I had to make split decisions in that situations doing police work. But
Right.
getting back to football, we do play about a half a yard apart, maybe closer at certain times at the length of a football when you're playing defensive line. And a lot of times, and we've talked about this in the past, we were prepared a lot of times, and we played most of the time, I'd say 60 to 80% out of what we call a base defensive front, which prepared us for almost any situation. And I always go back to that stance and 6-inch step where if I end up taking that short step, I can pass rush out of that or I can run defend out of that. Now that's kind of back when the game was more of a power game when we played. Now
Right.
the evolution of the game now at every level is different now. So what you're asking these kids now how to prepare and how to react is more of a different way of going
Right.
about it.
What are your eyes when you make contact with an offensive lineman? Obviously, you are working on your feet and your hands, but your eyes have to find the ball right away. You don't look at your opponent. Is that correct?
See now, that's total opposite the way the game was played back in the early '80s, mid '80s. Everything up front was a power game, and everything hinged on reading that helmet in front of you. That was what the defensive line. That's what we were taught. It was not looking in the backfield and looking for the ball was third and fourth on the list.
Oh, okay.
If that hat was reaching, we were working to fight through the hat on a run play.
Okay.
If he turned blocked, we would turn down into the next man, and our rush lanes would change. But everything back then was dictated with that helmet in front of you. That was always your first key. But now, as you look at the game, how it's evolved,
Mm-hmm.
they've taken the helmet out of the game, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the 3 points of contact what it used to be. The two hands and the helmet were our 3 points of contact. And I know you can expand on this. So,
Right.
but as far as playing up front, defensive line, we never lined up in a gap. Never. We always lined up on a shoulder, on an outside eye, head up on a helmet because that was our read. That was we called that our pressure read. The two guys on each side we termed them as visual reads. So
Mm-hmm.
when you felt pressure come down, you knew you had a double team. You had to fight the pressure to split that double team. Now, again, if that guy reached on me and I was playing, a zero, I was playing heads up on the center or heads up on the guard, I knew right away that ball is going that side or that side by the pressure I was getting on one side or the other.
Okay.
It was all dictated.
And then you would find the ball after that, after you make a couple reads and then step.
Exactly. If you stood up and looked over the top for the football, you were blocked. So,
Yep.
But again, Paul, you got to understand, the game was played 28 to 30 inches off the ground up front. It wasn't played like it was for you guys playing defensive back, where you're surveying the whole field more or less.
Yeah.
Well,
you guys, when in a defensive lineman stance, in a 2-minute drill, when you know they're going to pass, they have to throw the ball. It's third and long. Does your alignment change and does your read change, and how do you approach pass rush different than a run rush?
Absolutely. When we look at tendencies, first of all, there's film work involved, as you well know.
Right.
Hours of film work to look at your opponent's tendencies. Once you get into that 2-minute or you get into long yardage and you get into an 85 to 90% pass position, now we're gonna take those two DNs and we're gonna put them out maybe foot to foot, and our inside guys are maybe gonna run a stunt once in a while. Maybe we're going to loop a tackle or loop another tackle, or try to get somebody free.
Right.
But the bottom line here is rush gaps are vital. And if you watch football as a coach, as an upcoming coach, and you're teaching defensive line, to keep your rush lane is the most important thing, because you know yourself playing defensive back. If I leave a lane open, that just takes you away from your coverage, because that quarterback's is gonna tuck the ball.
Find it. Yeah, he'll find it.
And you're 10, 12, 15 yards downfield. All of a sudden you got to come up, and that's a first down. So
right.
But that definitely in pass situations where it's 85 to 90% pass, we're gonna sell out and change our stance. Also, you got to remember, this is when you're playing down a distance and you're playing run first, pass second. Your stance is different than getting in that sprinter stance and taking off the football.
Wow. That's interesting. I'm glad you talked about tendencies. Let's talk a little bit about it. Yep. Also, as a defensive back, we had to drop into these zones vertically, not just horizontally, but also vertically. In other words, how many yards from the line of scrimmage? And you have a set of rules, but a player's got to know the exceptions to some of those rules depending on these different situations. He may have to drop 4 yards inside the hash or 2 yards outside the hash, depending on the situation and the coverage that dictates it. But let's talk about tendencies. Does a team pass a lot? You have to know this. When do they pass? What routes do they like to run? What formation do they like to run these routes in? How fast is the wide receiver that you're covering? All these things a defensive back has to think about before the play is snapped. Now, the position on the field. Is the ball on their 5-yard line backed up, or is it on our 5-yard line? Is it on the hash marks? Because the hash marks are 18 yards apart, 18 from the sidelines, high school, okay? So most teams like to pass to the wide side of the field where they're getting 36 yards to work with horizontally.
And that right there is a tendency. You're looking at what they like to do. There are a lot of teams that like to go short side, and that's very, very big when you're watching film. Are they in the middle of the field? Are they in the right hash? Are they in the left hash? You got
absolutely.
And again, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I go back to New York State football and stuff I've seen here when I coached here the past few years, and it separates these good coaches from great coaches, because you're watching film on a team that's doing that every week, and if they don't change, you're going to stop them. So, at some point they got to change their tendency in order if you're playing a good team that watches film.
Yeah, good point, Billy. People don't realize how much film work it does for hours and hours and hours. How much film work it takes to study an opponent. To get their tendencies down and to get these little things down, because you want to find a tendency, they want to break their tendencies, and so that's what it's a big game. It's a big chess match, and with DBs, we have to know that, and we have to know how far we are from the sideline. I told the DBs never to get closer to 6 yards to the sidelines ever, because you can use that as a defender.
Right.
So yeah, there are different things that that you have to look at. And actually, when you think about it, Billy, I did some research on it and I studied it, and I found that there's 8 or 9 decisions that a DB has to make before the snap of the ball. How many does he make after the snap during a 7-second play? There's another 3 or 4. This is where the discipline of practice takes control. You have to put the kids in position of reacting instead of thinking what to do. This is why you don't give them a ton of plays to remember or a lot of formation checks and audibles. You have to prepare correctly, okay? And you will play faster, because hesitating, even for a split second, could be the difference. And actually, the goal for a coach, for a player, is to get him into the correct habit that can be produced and reproduced instinctively under great pressure. The operative word there is instinctively, without thinking, okay? Because there's so much pressure on every play. The team with the players that don't panic or don't choke that we talked about earlier and can repeat that process, that's the team that's going to win every time. Because you hear coaches say, we didn't execute properly, right? Well, that's what they're talking about. These players did not make the correct decision, and there's 10 to 12 of them on every play in all these games. So every position player has a bunch of plays and a bunch of decisions to make. The quarterback obviously has the most, followed by the offensive lineman. The offensive lineman has to have to know the snap count, the run pass protection, what foot to step with, what guy to block, whether to go high or low, whether to hand or push or pull with your hands, sometimes hold the guy, right? So let's do the math, Billy. 11 players making 11 choices on every play in 75 games. Billy, that totals just for one team 9,000 decisions by your team that they make in one game.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
9,000 decisions. That's why when coaches say we didn't execute, well, out of those 9,000 decisions, maybe 8,000, 1,000 weren't very good, or 500 decisions weren't very good.
Exactly. You're not going to get them all right. I mean, that would be, it's probably, and you go back to execution we were talking about, and and it's a great point you bring up, and you think about everything else we do in life, as well as football, is execution. You go back to, football wise, you go back in the weight room where the games are won and lost. When you're squatting and bench pressing, everything has got to be exact. You don't do it close to that. When you're bench pressing and squatting, you're doing the exact same technique and execution every rep, whether it's 100 pounds or 500 pounds. And when you look at life, and I look at police work, I did police work for 20 plus years. I mean, we practice everything, drawing the weapon, everything was instinctive execution, because when everything went bad, you went back to that execution. You go right back to what you were trained, what you were taught, and hoping you get them 8,000, 9,000 reps right.
Right.
And
well, your job as a cop was life or death situation, but football is not life or death. So that must have served you. Discipline and preparation must have served you well.
It's a correlation. If you think about it, and you think about it as you take it apart, I know football is a game, let me tell you. And, doing the other stuff is real life. But, that stuff that I learned from a young age and growing up, everything related back to that. Everything we talk to on every week about different aspects of coaching, different parts of the game, all can relate to life lessons of everything we do every day.
Right. Absolutely. Next week, Billy, we're going to discuss game time coaching decisions and what should a coach tell their players in like a critical game type situation. Maybe a late timeout and the guys in the 2-minute drill to go down to beat you guys. You got the lead. What do you say to your players when you call timeout? We're going to talk all about that, Billy, next week.
Good. Let me add one thing, Paul, before we close up. When we're talking overall and getting off the subject a little bit, you're talking 3 levels of defense here. You're talking the line, the middle backers, and then the D-backs, which you played. Now, the coaches that are watching this, that are learning from this, got to understand that every level is going to help the next level. Like this is vitally important. If we don't have a good pass rush or a good run stop, we're killing the backers. If the backers aren't tackling, you guys in the backfield got to come up and make plays, and that shouldn't be the problem,
Billy, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because this is critical for coaches to understand that defensive line and DBs work so close hand in hand, not on the field literally, but what happens is a great pass rush equals interceptions. Great coverage equals sacks.
Exactly.
So that's the
100%.
the relationship of defense and that's how much they depend on each other.
Yeah, and I think and I really think that a lot of coaches that are coaching high school kids, even college and pro guys, they don't bring them groups together enough, because I was close. I was the closest to my three other brothers up front. There's no doubt about it. But my guys behind me, my D-backs, and I keep saying it every time we talk, and I keep saying, you should have been at SU with us playing defensive back behind them. Okay, that's we were close with everybody on that defense.
Oh, Billy, good stuff, man. Great. There's a wild mascot right there, man.
All right.
Wild lab. He's just going nuts.
Hey.
All right, man. Hey, thanks, man. Prayers are for Billy and all our friends and family. My brother's down somewhere in that area as well. So prayers to everybody there, and we'll have him back next week, I'm sure.
Anytime.
All right, brother. Love you, bud.
Good talking to you.
See you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Right, stay tuned with these messages, everybody. Another edition of Four Wheel Drive here on Coach's Corner. Stay tuned for these great sponsors. Without them, this just wouldn't be possible. Have a great sports tonight, everybody. Talk to you soon.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bay Minette, Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
75 years of service in high-tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High-tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple pane of brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
Drive a little to save a lot on 170 Buicks and GMCs at Step 1 Buick GMC. Get savings up to $4,000 on new Buick Encores, $9,450 on new Buick Envisions, $7,000 on new GMC Yukon XLs, or up to $15,345 off on new Sierras. Only at Step 1 Buick GMC, Pensacola. Plus tax, tag, title, license, dealer processing fee expires 7/31/24 on select new 24 in-stock models. Discount off MSRP includes all incentives.
My name is Steve Reynolds. I'm the manager and owner of Cordova Lanes, and we help keep your mind out of the gutter. Cordova Lanes is part of the community of Pensacola. Being here for 43 years, we've entertained more people than any other bowling center in the city. We sell fun for a living. Cordova Lanes is located at 2111 Airport Boulevard in Pensacola behind Cordova Mall. Come on out and see us at Cordova Lanes Bowling Center. Thank you.